Yo, 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 welcome back to the podcast. My MMA.Unhinged, I was about to say my MMA news there, but MMA.Unhinged joined by Oscar Silva once again. It's been a long time, so I'm going to be a little bit rusty. But yeah, it's fantastic to be joined once again by Oscar. And we're here to talk about some fights. We're going to have a little bit of UFC and Bellator catch up. The last show I would have been on was preview of UFC 266. And since then, we've had a lot going on, haven't we?
Yeah, I've been hard at work with short little preview and recap episodes in the last couple of weeks, and they're simply not the same as being joined by a co-host.
I thank you for the kind words. I'm always the one, I'm always energetic, giving that energy across. And man, you know what it is? It's the fights. They just pump me up, and it gets me ready for these shows. But working, 5 days a week, it's 9 till 6. It's hard work, and I always try and fit it in the schedule. And this week on Wednesday, I had some time. So here we are. Now we're going to talk about some fights. We're going to talk about Lad versus Dumont this weekend. We're going to talk about Dern versus Rodriguez, and briefly touch up on the Contender Series and Bellator 264 MVP versus Lima, which I was there. You would have seen on the channel. And oh my God, what a fantastic experience. I loved every single minute of it.
Yeah, I would love to be there one day with you. I heard it's basically a dream job.
Yeah, 100%. It was phenomenal. I just remember walking around in the London at Wembley, just seeing all these fighters just walk past me. And if you're not a fighting fan, and these people are walking past, you wouldn't have a clue. But I was walking past Luke Trainer. He's 6'6". Oh my God, this guy is massive. And not only is he massive, he's a prospect. He's a huge prospect. In the future, this man's got an incredible future in front of him. He's gonna be a champion inside Bellator. And if he ever comes to free agency, UFC has to stamp his name out quick, because he could be a proper prospect inside the UFC, and bring some good numbers and good eyes to him inside the UFC. But he's at Bellator right now. The light heavyweight division is stacked in Bellator. It's incredible, one of the best divisions they have. And man, he's got a lot of tough tests to come in front of him. And he had tough tests against Yannick Bahati, but he came out on top. And wow, it's phenomenal. But anyway, I'll get off topic. But we'll talk about. Firstly, we'll talk about Dern versus Rodriguez. So, Oscar, go ahead.
All right. This was a very interesting fight because we knew if Mackenzie got it on the ground for long enough that she would submit Marina, who's just a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mackenzie is the best submission artist of any female division in the UFC. She's so talented down there that Paul Felder could not even talk us through some of the transitions. She's just so advanced, and I was so impressed by the fact that Marina Rodriguez survived for 4 minutes on the ground within that second round. That second round is arguably a 10-8. Mackenzie got the takedown, and she was able to get her down there for 4 minutes. So many transitions, and somehow Marina does not get submitted. And as long as it was on the feet, she simply outclassed Mackenzie, didn't she?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal fight. As you mentioned there, if Rodriguez is on the feet, she outclasses Dern. But if Dern gets it to the ground, as you mentioned, it's Dern's world. But we're talking about this pre the show. We were both quite impressed of how Rodriguez handled herself on the ground.
Yeah, 100%. We've seen in previous fights that off of her back, she's not that great. But I've seen some decent improvements from her. And for somebody as skilled on the ground as Mackenzie, not being able to put her away was very surprising. But the thing with Marina Rodriguez that has always benefited her, every round starts on the feet. And unfortunately for Mackenzie Dern, she's not a great offensive wrestler. So she could not get it to the ground. She only got to the ground once, and that was in that second round. Sure, she was able to muscle it down to the ground like in the fourth round, I believe. But that was only a minute. Mackenzie Dern got some decent ground pound going, but on the feet, Mackenzie Dern just simply doesn't have the confidence to throw much, and she just kept on getting hit, and she's always behind on the scorecards. I thought if it stayed on the feet long enough, I believe that Rodriguez would have put her away, but I was surprised that Dern was able to hang in there with her for 25 minutes, and much of it was on the feet.
Yeah, as we mentioned, I feel like this is. Oh my God, I can't even get my words out. But hold on. Yes, Dern lost this fight, but I do believe this is one of the most important fights that Dern had to have in her career. She lost it, but what she's going to get in the long run is experience, and she's definitely going to learn from this in the future. And her next fight is going to be huge for her. But what I'm looking for next for Rodriguez is I feel like she's earned another shot at Carla Esparza, but I believe Carla Esparza should have got the title shot. So she's in a bit of a weird position at the moment.
Yeah, Dana White said that sitting out really never works out for fighters, and man, I really believe that Carla Esparza did more than enough by beating Yan Xiaonan, not just beating her, but dominating her and finishing her. Carla Esparza is not traditionally a finisher, and that was the big knock on her. And what did she do? She destroys Yan Xiaonan. I thought that was more than enough, but the UFC had different plans. I'm not really interested in that rematch right now. The first fight happened just about a year ago. I believe everybody knows that the fight to make is Marina Rodriguez against Joanna Jędrzejczyk next year, because that would be a striking extravaganza, and I believe no fan would walk away unhappy after that.
100%. That would be a phenomenal fight. Kind of that one slipped my mind, but hopefully we do see Jędrzejczyk back in the octagon for 2022. I'm not too sure whether she put a date or a month on when she returns, but I hope she gets back in the octagon soon. Former champion, lit up the strawweight division. Unfortunately, lost the belt, but now we've got that rematch between Rose and Zhang. And oh my god, that's a phenomenal fight. But yeah, we're here to talk about Joan Rodriguez, and it was a fantastic performance from Rodriguez, and fully deserved win. And as you mentioned, Rodriguez versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Yeah, yes, please give me that.
All right, that about wraps it up for the recap of that. I would love to see Mackenzie make some improvements in the offensive wrestling, and she could be a champion one day. Who knows? But moving on to another bright prospect, Randy Brown defeated Jared Gooden by unanimous decision. Jared Gooden missed weight for that, and I personally believe that's the reason he did not get knocked out by that front kick in that first round that destroyed Randy Brown's foot. That was marvelous. Randy Brown looked good the entire fight. He consistently hurt Jared Gooden, and Jared Gooden just continues to amaze me with his durability, from the Joe Ban fight to the Bubakar Nurmagomedov fight. Now this, where he's clearly getting outstruck and just won't go down. Very impressive stuff by both guys. But in the end, Randy Brown really looked impressive, and it looks like he's ready for top 15 guys again.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I think this is a good fight for Randy Brown against Jared Gooden, who wasn't too long ago. I'm not too sure. He got a knockout win really early, and he looked really good. But as you mentioned,
it was Nicholas Stolze.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and but unfortunately, he missed weight for this fight, and as you mentioned, he paid the price for it. And Randy Brown looked phenomenal. And as you mentioned, I'd like to see him take on a top 15. I'm not too sure who we could match him up with. I know Donald Cerrone, he's going back down to lightweight for January 2022. He said he's come back and he's going to lightweight again. So he's out of the equation. It's just who would you match Randy Brown up? He's in a weird position.
I would say Muslim Salikov. Muslim Salikov doesn't have a fight right now, and he's number 14 right now.
That's a fantastic matchup. I'd love to see that happen. But yeah, Randy Brown looked phenomenal. 30-27 on all scorecards. Fantastic performance. And he moves on, improves, and as you mentioned, looks to take on a top 15 next. We'll move on to the next fight. Tim Elliott versus Nicolau. A phenomenal fight. But I think the worst mistake in this fight was from James Krause. He's a phenomenal coach, but I think it was the end of the second round. He was so confident that Tim Elliott was 2-0 up, and I had it 1-0. But he was so confident that Tim Elliott was 2-0 up, and that the third round, Elliott kind of took it off because he thought he was winning, and obviously the judges said otherwise.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't place the blame on James Krause. I would place the blame on Tim Elliott for his approach in the third round. He just accepted the position off of his back. And if you know the judges in the Nevada State Athletic Commission, they hate when you're on their back. They will never score a round for you off of your back. It simply doesn't work that way. And that was a very definitive round for Matheus Nicolau. He very clearly outstruck him that round. And Tim Elliott was simply stalling, and that was just a very bad move on his part. And honestly, I think Tim Elliott might have been the better fighter on this night if you saw that first round. He was firing on all cylinders, super confident. Problem was he was feeling himself too much, and he just left himself open. I believe if Tim Elliott had the right approach, I believe he could have won this, but it just didn't work out for him. He had a tremendous first round, but after that, Nicolau took over, and he once again proved me right that Nicolau is ready for a top 5 guy, because I think he's right up there, and he lost a lot of momentum after he got knocked out by Ortiz and got cut.
Yeah, 100%. I would like to see him take on a top 5 guy too. We've got Panjota. He's in a weird position as well. As he should have got the title shot, but wasn't ready. Now Davison Figueiredo gets that one. But as you mentioned, Dana White doesn't like guys who sit around and wait. So maybe that's a potential matchup they make, but a big step up there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a little bit of a weird situation at the top for flyweight. I think David Dvorak probably is the right fight right now. Dvorak doesn't have a fight.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great fight. But also, what was a great fight was Mira Agapova. She bounces back after a loss against what the biggest upset I think it was in 2020.
Yeah, easily. And yeah, I would say that outcome happens 1 out of 10 times. Shannon Jobson was just tough enough to survive that early flurry and put her away later. Agapova, she took a year off after that fight, and it appears she made all the right improvements at her new camp. They really worked on patience, and that was what won her this fight. She was countering Mazzo's strikes so well, and it looked like she had a power edge here too. And eventually, she was able to crack Mazzo and immediately submit her. I could not be more impressed with anybody else on this card than Mariah Agapova. This was my favorite finish this night. This was very impressive, and I think her future is much brighter than I once thought it was.
Yeah, 100%. I think she's a fantastic fighter, and this gives me another feeling is that her loss in her last fight is going to give her motivation, to get even better. And I feel like she's now going to be a force. I thought she was going to be a force to reckon with after her debut. She looked phenomenal. She put on an absolute statement, and then kind of got set back. But now I think she's going to be back on track, and she's going to go straight to the top of the division. Maybe she will fall back at the top of the division against some of these guys, some of these girls. I mean, at flyweight, and I feel like she's got a big future. She's definitely going to be a challenger at the top. A fantastic performance against Sabrina Mazzo, who's a tough fighter. They're both very big for flyweight, I would say.
Yeah, I believe Mariah Moroz is the right matchup to make for her right now. They both trained together at American Top Team, but it appears that things went sour with Agapova and American Top Team. Rose accused her of stalking people, of just being not a good person, and she called her a junkie. So I believe that would be a good fight right now. It's got a lot of heat behind it.
Wow. I didn't know that. Thanks for breaking that news. But yeah, that's interesting. That's what I would like to see next then, because everyone liked a little bit of heat in between a fight, and the breakup between ATT just makes it all so much better. But Chris Gutierrez, oh man, phenomenal.
Yeah, this was a somewhat of a typical Chris Gutierrez performance. Very high volume, lots of leg kicks as expected, and Kalaris just didn't really have an answer. One of the biggest takeaways I had from this fight is Kalaris has almost no head movement. The guy was always there to be hit. He's very young. I think he probably got into the UFC too young, because the guy has taken a tremendous amount of damage in his last couple of fights. If you remember the fight against Jackson, if you remember the fight against I can't remember right now, but Luke Sanders, yeah, took a tremendous beating. That was a comeback win. But I don't know if he's UFC ready right now. He's definitely got a lot of flaws, and Chris Gutierrez took advantage of them and had a really good performance.
Yeah, 100%. He looked phenomenal. As you mentioned, just a typical Chris Gutierrez performance inside the octagon. He's had, what was it? Is he 5-0 with 2 draws inside the UFC now?
I believe so, yeah. He's on a really good run right now.
Yeah, he's looking really good inside the UFC. Every time, who did he get a draw against?
It was Cody Durden, who's actually a flyweight.
Yeah, that's it. Cody Durden. And maybe a little bit of a step up in competition for Chris Gutierrez next.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I believe that the right matchup for him is actually a former opponent of Kolar's. I think that that Jackson would be the right matchup next. The guy's huge, and Gutierrez always takes advantage of his leg reach, and I believe that would be a really good weapon to use against Jackson with those really long legs.
Yeah, a fun fact about Montel Jackson. If I'm correct, he has one of the biggest hands inside the UFC. He has like an extra large glove, which is incredible. He's the bantamweight.
Yeah, he's got heavyweight size gloves, and I believe that would be a really fun fight to watch.
Well, you mentioned heavyweights, and someone who has a heavyweight size glove was Aleksandar Romanov. And oh my God, Jared Vanderaa was on the end of an absolute beating from start to finish. Alex Romanov, he made sure there was no controversy in this fight, and he won it.
Yeah, this was exactly the performance I thought Romanov would have. He's not the greatest submission expert, despite having a ton of submissions on his win. A lot of them, he just muscles guys into submission. Vanderea's BJJ is not too shabby, and he avoided getting submitted, but he had a serious beating put on him. He's just really not good off of his back when you got a huge heavyweight on you. This was basically the same fight as the Sergey Spivak fight for Vanderaa. That's why I was so confident that Romanov would get it done.
Yeah, Romanov puts himself, sort of after that Harness-Spina fight. There was a little bit, was it the groin kicks that eventually ended the fight?
Yeah, it was basically a glancing groin kick, and Romanov basically called it quits. He was looking for a way out. Let's be honest there, because Spina was taking that fight over, and that was one of the least impactful groin strikes I've ever seen. That was just overestimated by Romanov. And hey, he's 15-0 now, so if you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, 100%. As you mentioned, 15-0 now, so maybe it's time to crack into that top 15. Romanov, I know there's a Brit who's in the heavyweight division. Romanov versus Tom Aspinall. Maybe.
Come on. That's kind of not fair to Romanov. Let's be honest. I think Aspinall probably steamrolls him like he did Spivak. I think Spivak is a better version than Romanov, and we saw what happened there. I believe the right matchup is actually the winner of the co-main event for this Saturday. I believe the winner of Arlovsky versus Felipe. I think that would be very fun because we've seen once again that Arlovsky's the true gatekeeper of the heavyweight division, and I think he wins. We'll preview that later on, but I think that's the right test for Romanov.
Yeah, and moving on to the next fight, Charles Rosa lost against Damon Jackson, and an interesting one. Charles Rosa, you saw this as well. Charles Rosa actually lost followers after this fight.
Yeah, that was super strange. I don't know what's up with that. And honestly, instead of losing 800 followers, he probably should have gained like 8,000 followers because he fought his heart out here. Damon Jackson, he got busted open badly by a spinning back elbow in the third round. That got all over the Back for Blood, I believe, movie or video game, whatever it is. That was a pretty cool visual. This was a very grinding fight. Both guys were just always being active in this fight. And Damon Jackson did what I thought he would. He completely overwhelmed Rosa in the grappling realm. And say what you want about Rosa, but his grappling defense is very good. He was down on the ground with Bryce Mitchell for a long time, didn't get submitted, and he's down on the ground with Jackson, and he does not get submitted. He's very good at avoiding submissions, but at the end of the day, he'll just stay on his back and he'll lose the fight that way, and that's what happened.
Yeah, wrestling was the story of this fight, and Damon Jackson put it on full open display against Charles Rosa. A phenomenal performance, and he improves to 19-4, and he's looking real good. And his family was there in attendance at the Apex, so it was always good to see him get a win in front of his family. He's a fantastic man, a gentleman, and he improves once again against Charles Rosa, who Charles Rosa said before this fight, this is pretty much his last crack at the dice to go to the title.
Yeah, and I really never saw Charles Rosa as even a top 10 guy, but he'll always give you a tough fight for the most part, I would say, and I believe he's worthy of staying in the UFC. this is actually the first time. Wait, never mind. The streak of Charles Rosa trading wins and losses continues. We'll end it with that. Moving on, Lupi Godinez submitted Silvana Gomez Juarez in the first round. Super impressive. Got a performance of the night bonus. Absorbed 3 total strikes. Hence why she's booked for this Saturday already against Lara Carolina. Very impressive. We'll touch on that later. But what did you think of her performance here? Her first submission win in professional MMA.
Yeah, it was a fantastic performance. She did what I expected, what was going to happen, and she it was just flawless in my opinion. And now we know she's booked again against the one that, as you mentioned, Lara Carolina. In 7 days, she's going to make history. She's going to break Khamzat Chimaev's record. She's going to be a UFC history breaker, history maker, whatever you want to call her. But yeah, 2 fights in 7 days. That's phenomenal, man. And hopefully she gets a win. That'll be phenomenal history making. And but yeah, as we'll talk about her fight against Gomez Juarez, she looked phenomenal when she got that submission armbar, and that was really the cherry on top. I think it was a great fight, and her transition was even better to that armbar.
Yeah, what really floored me here was I actually picked Gomez Juarez to win this fight. I thought maybe she's got ever so slightly a striking edge. I could not trust Godinez taking the ground because I really had not seen too much of it. But man, Gomez Juarez was just that bad defensively on the ground, where she got submitted by a purple belt who's never submitted anybody in MMA. That really shocked me, and it showed that Godinez has more tools in the toolbox than I thought she did. So this was very impressive, and she's moving up a division against Lara Carolina this Saturday. I could not be more impressive, and she was actually part of the first series of bonus winners that were all females in the UFC, showing that that the female divisions are making waves.
Yeah, 100%. A fantastic win for her, and now she improves to 6-1, and she looks to improve to 7-1 this weekend. But she's got a long, tough test in Lara Carolina. You know, is huge at flyweight. She used to fight at bantamweight, and she's a big woman. But she has long limbs. Could we see 2 submissions in 7 days?
That would be absolutely wild. And talking about wild, that first fight was bananas. That first round was very difficult to score because we had 2 knockdowns by Ontiveros, and for the remaining 4 minutes, we see him getting taken down and viciously cut up, ground and pounded, and he's on wobbly legs back to his stool. How did you score that first round? Because every judge actually scored the first round for Garcia just by getting dropped twice.
I think I scored it for Garcia. But as you mentioned, despite getting dropped twice, it's 4 minutes of just control time. And he got them knockdowns, but there wasn't. He didn't do anything after the knockdowns. He took it down and got controlled. So I gave that first round to Steve Garcia.
Yeah, I actually scored it for Ontiveros, but this is a scenario where I believe that they should just use the 10-10. Yeah, but they're very discouraged of doing that because that's when they say that there's no discernible difference. But yeah, that should have been a 10-10 round. But the second round, that did not need a judge's scorecard. Garcia just rinsed and repeat what he did in the first round, and he annihilated Ontiveros. Ontiveros has a huge hole in his game on the ground, and that was very evident here. On the feet, he's so lethal, man. But yeah, I like him at this new division because at the previous divisions, those guys would have mauled him. Could you imagine a guy like Khamzat Chimaev or Albert Duraev on top of this guy? We got Garcia, who once fought at bantamweight, mauling this guy. So it's a good move on Ontiveros' part, but very impressive by Garcia here. I really like what he did here, and this was only his second fight in the UFC, so he's shown improvements.
Yeah, 100%. Ontiveros has such a weird record. If you look at his record, he once got a win via, I think it might have been heart attack.
Yeah, the sudden, I believe his opponent's heart stopped. How do they even check that? I don't know what happened there. Yeah, really weird stuff. He's been finished in all of his 8 losses, including losses to Kevin Holland. and Michael Venom Page. My goodness, he's fought some killers. He's always going to be exciting to watch, win or lose.
Yeah, he always. I've watched some of his fights, and what he does lack is a little bit of heart and determination. But I've seen him quit on multiple times in his previous fights while I was looking at his tape. But if he sorts that out, he's huge for lightweight. He was huge. He fought Kevin Holland in his last fight, and he was big then. Gave Kevin Holland a little bit of trouble on the feet, but as soon as he gets to some sort of wrestling exchanges, it's just completely different, and he doesn't like that whatsoever. So he, as you mentioned, he probably needs to follow Kevin Holland and maybe AKA sort that out and do a little bit over there.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I don't think he's in a notable camp, and I think he needs some better looks because it doesn't look like he's getting them. Moving on to this Saturday's card, I think this card is being disrespected by a lot of people. It's really not that bad. I think on paper it's actually better than the Calvillo card from last year. This main event, of course, it's between two people that could definitely get a featherweight title shot with a win here, could they not?
Yeah, 100%. But this is a main event that I didn't expect. Does either woman deserve this main event? And I'm not too sure. Dumont is 1-1 inside the UFC.
2-1.
2-1 then inside the UFC. Her loss came against Megan
Anderson knockout in the first round.
Yeah, is it going to be the same story here? But lad, she fought or tried to fight. Was it on the card that we just previewed?
Yeah, Macy Chiasson. Was the fight. She missed weight, and
it was horrible scene.
Yeah, that fight did not come together well at all. And I've been saying for 2 years now that Aspen Ladd has to move up to this division. She's always been a huge bantamweight, and at this division, she's actually at only a 1 inch and 1 in height and in reach against Norma Dumont, who's a well-sized featherweight. So I think this is the weight class where she belongs, and honestly, the weight class where the path to a title shot is so much easier. You basically just have to get 1 win, and you have a title shot. That's what Megan Anderson did.
Exactly, and if she beats Norma Dumont, that's it. She basically got a title shot against Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, not the greatest reward in the world, but hey, Lauren Murphy had to talk herself into fighting Valentina Shevchenko, so you got to do what you got to do. I think Norma Dumont will put on a show here against Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd has never fought at this division. We have no idea how both these women will perform in the championship rounds. That's why it's really hard to pick. Aspen Ladd, of course, has a big edge on the ground, but Mike, her striking defense on the feet is just so poor. She walks into every shot, and I think Norma Dumont is good enough of a striker to over time get enough damage going where she can win on the scorecards.
Yeah, not only that, it wasn't long ago until Aspen Ladd was trying to cut down to 135 pounds. And how has she recovered since that fight, since that weight cut? I mean, because if you look on the scales, I think it's twice now that she's been shaken on them scales. It's just not a very good look. And as you mentioned, this is a smart move to go up to 145 pounds. But do I think it's a little bit early since the last weight cut? I do. Look what happened to Tony Ferguson. He cut weight, but that was unnecessary. That's Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson things. And then he fought 2 weeks later, and
3 weeks later, something like that. Yeah,
and he took on a beating. So I believe we're going to see this sort of same situation here, and I think this is too much of a quick turnaround. And I think the UFC just threw Aspen Ladd in there, and I think she's gonna lose.
Yeah. Also, the thing with Aspen here, as I said, she's never fought at this weight class. So at bantamweight, she was able to muscle all these girls down and really dominate. Hence why she only has 1 loss, being a 16-second KO against Germaine. But in the case of Norma Dumont here, Norma Dumont is very physically strong, and I think that benefits her. I don't think the takedowns will be easier, and I think Norma outpoints her on the feet.
100%. Well, that was the main event, and the co-main event is Andrei Arlovski versus Felipe A very good fight. Andrei Arlovski, as you mentioned earlier on the broadcast, that he's the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division, and Felipe tries to pass that test on Saturday night. Does he pass the test?
I don't think he does. I think Felipe has basically underperformed in all of his UFC showings. Felipe got a ton of finishes on the regional scene, but that was against very bad competition. If you look at his UFC fights, the guy does not have a lot of pop on his punches, and that's bad news if you're a heavyweight and you're fighting a guy like Andrei Arlovski, who, for most of the time, he's only losing by KO these days. So if Felipe can't land those big shots that'll rock Arlovski, I think Arlovski will have slightly higher output in this fight. Felipe, I was so confident he would destroy Jay Collier. I was beyond confident that he would do it because Jay Collier is naturally a middleweight who just got way out of shape and came back to fight. And I was thinking Felipe is a real heavyweight. I think he really does good work in that fight and puts him away. That didn't happen. In my opinion, I thought Jay Collier won that fight. It was a split decision, I believe. Collier had more volume. I thought he won that fight. And I think very lowly of Collier as a heavyweight, but Arlovski, I think pretty highly of him. Somehow, some way, at 43, I believe it is now, he's beating these heavyweight prospects fairly consistently. He's not finishing them anymore. He doesn't care about finishing. He'll land the right punches that'll get him the win on the judges' scorecards. Arlovski just fights smart. Felipe does not. He begs guys to go in the pocket with him, and when they don't go in there, they can just pick him apart from distance. I think that's what Arlovski does here, and I think leg kicks will be a big weapon for Arlovski here. And I think Felipe, I don't think he's much of a UFC level guy, to be honest, because you could argue that he lost every fight in the UFC. The Tafa fight, controversial loss, win. The Collier fight, controversial win. And then in the Spivak fight, Spivak is not really a good striker. And what does he do? He beats him on the feet. I don't think this is a good matchup for Felipe, even though he's way younger. I think this is a really good showcase fight for Arlovski once again to show that he can still beat these young guys.
Yeah, and he did that in his last fight against Chase Sherman, put on an absolutely phenomenal performance. As you mentioned, at 44 or 43, and he's still doing it. It's incredible. He's defying all physics of aging. Andrei Arlovski, man. When was his first fight in the UFC? I would love to. I love it. Was it might have been like
2001 or 2000? Wow. 2000, yeah.
Wow, what was that? Like UFC 13, UFC 10?
Yeah, I wasn't even born. That's all you need to know. The guy's been around forever. He's got so much more experience than Felipe. He's had 20 losses. Those are 20 lessons, and those are lessons that Felipe has yet to learn. Felipe got Brawler tattooed on his face recently. I don't know if you saw that. So that lets you know what his game plan is in most of his fights. And I don't think that works out too well with Arlovski, especially when there's not a ton of pop on Felipe's punches.
Yeah, I feel like Arlovski, even though he's 43, I think he's going to be a little bit too quick for Felipe. And if you try and make it a brawl, I think Arlovski chips away at him and eventually gets that third round. I'm predicting to finish here. I think Arlovski's going to wear on him a little bit too much in this fight, and I think he's going to tire him out. And I think he's going to get the late third round stoppage.
That would be one hell of a way for Arlovski to get a win here. He hasn't been able to put anybody away since 2016, so that would be definitely a big moment for Arlovski. That would kind of remind me of the Matt Brown finish over Lima earlier this year. I'm
just seeing now. ESPN have Andrei Arlovski as the USA flag. Can you see that?
Yeah, he's from Belarus. Kind of weird. He trains at Coconut Creek, Florida, but he's a Belarus fighter.
Yeah. Well, moving on. Before we move on, we both have Andrei Arlovski in this fight, and as you mentioned, this is a good showcase fight for him, and I think it's going to be. I feel like this is going to be one of the performances that we'll talk about next week, and we'll be highly impressed of. But Felipe's got to prove us wrong, and he's got a big showcase to do it, and in a co-main event. And we talked about one veteran, but now we're going to talk about another, Jim Miller. How long's he been fighting for? Jesus Christ! You know, how is he still going as well? It'd be interesting to see when his first fight was in the UFC. I don't think it was. It was after Andrzejowski. Andrzejowski's been around for donkeys. But I want to say Jim Miller's first fight might have been at UFC 55.
UFC 55. Let me see if you're right. It was at UFC 89, Bisping versus Lieben.
Wow.
Yeah.
Here's a guess. What was that? What year would that have been?
That would have been 2008.
Wow.
13 years in the UFC for Jim Miller. And he's fighting a guy in Gonzalez who's actually booked later this year for a fight. And they were saying that the winner would probably be called up to the UFC or maybe get a contender series spot. That lets you know the level that Gonzalez is at. I don't know if he's UFC level yet. The contender series fight would have been where we learned if he was UFC level. And Jim Miller is the definition of UFC level. The guy has been tied with Donald Cerrone for most fights in the UFC. He's got so many wins, and most of them recently have been by submission. And how has Gonzalez been finished multiple times? By submission. Jim Miller, ever since he got Lyme disease, ever since midway through the second round, he very much slows down. Even if he slows down, I don't know if Eric Gonzalez is good enough to put away Jim Miller. I think Jim Miller could win a decision, but I'm fairly confident that he gets this on the ground and finds a submission very early in this fight. I think this is a really good matchup for Jim Miller. Of course, if Eric Gonzalez was some cardio machine, really high volume later on, he would have this in the back, but I don't think this is the case here. I think Jim Miller has a much better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I think he gets a rear naked choke or something like that very early.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm also going for a round one submission with Jim Miller. It's just different. When he's on the ground, he's different. He's different level, and I think Gonzalez is going to be on in for a quick night because Jim Miller will get it to the ground early and get that submission win. And I'm going to go with rear naked choke. I believe one of his favorite submissions. A lot on his record, and so I think Jim Miller gets this one done. As I say, is it done in one? There we go.
Yeah, I think this will be a rude awakening for Gonzalez. I don't know if he's UFC level yet, and I think Jim Miller will teach him a lesson, just like he did guys like Roosevelt Roberts, Alex White. This is going to be a really good win for Jim Miller after a recent loss. Moving on to a highly anticipated bout between two flyweight prospects, Manon Fiorot fighting Mayra Bueno Silva. I cannot wait for this one because I truly think this one ends in spectacular fashion. I believe both are alive for a finish here. And Manon Fiorot is a big favorite here, but I don't think that's justified. If you want to take a look at Manon Fiorot's UFC run, sure, she's getting really cool finishes, but who's she getting these finishes against? Victoria Leonardo. I don't know if she's UFC level. She even got rocked on her contender series fight. That was a comeback win. She's not the most durable fighter, and she's not the best grappler either. That's why Manon Fiorot was able to do solid work there. And in her second fight, she was booked against Mariah Moroz, and that would have been a challenging fight for Fiorot, but Moroz has to step out of the fight, and who steps in? A strawweight, moving up a weight class, and Tabatha Ricci, who really has underdeveloped striking. She works with Mackenzie Dern. She kind of has a similar skill set as Mackenzie. Not very good on the feet, not a great wrestler, and undersized in that fight. And of course, Fiorot butchers her. She destroys her, gets a second round KO. And Bueno Silva, on the other hand, she's fought the who's who right now. She's actually on a really good run. Her draw against Matilda Del Rosa was very impressive. That fight was very good. I believe it was a fight of the night. I think Bueno Silva is much more tested. Most of her wins are by submission, but she's got no takedowns in the UFC. So this fight is very hard to pick. If Bueno Silva uses her fight IQ in any way, I think she gets to the ground and she finds a submission against Fiorot, who has a karate base. So she's definitely going to be behind on the ground. Don't you think?
I agree with the parts you said. This is a big, massive step up for Fiorot. as you mentioned, the competition that she's been fighting is not the best. It was wins that we expected that she would get. But in this fight, I feel like she's going to be tested a lot more. Maybe she'll come through a little bit of struggles in the fight. Maybe end up on the end of a little bit of a one-sided round, or get tested a little bit in this fight. That's what I'm ultimately looking for. It's for her to get tested and see how she overcomes that. And I think this is the fight for her to get tested. And I feel like she's still going to overcome that. And I feel like she's going to get either a round 2 or a round 3 finish. I'm very high on Flory, and I think she gets it done.
I think Bueno Silva is very durable. She's kind of a zombie in there. She'll take whatever you give her, and she'll just march forward. And she loves to be in the clinch and cut you up with elbows and her knees. I think this will be a very ugly fight for Ferro. And it will I think this probably will overwhelm Ferro. I don't know enough about her on the ground to be able to pick her, especially as a 2-1 favorite. I think Mariah Bueno Silva surprises some people. But moving on to the opener on the main card, I don't think it will come to you as a surprise that my pick here with enormous confidence is Julian Marquez by first round knockout.
Yeah, but last time we picked against Jordan Wright, he surprised us.
The problem there was we both addressed the fact that was a very low-level MMA fight, that both guys were barely in the UFC, and that the winner might get cut. And that also Jamie Pickett, man, he went for a takedown and left himself open for those elbows. That's kind of a rookie mistake at the UFC level. So that was not the biggest shock to me. But, man, I really think Julian Marquez has everything it takes to beat Wright. If you want to beat Wright, what you need is a good chin and straight up power. And that's what Marquez has. Marquez is not super technical. His ground game isn't too great. But Jordan Wright, he's always there to be hit. That durability is not great. He's been knocked out by Anthony Hernandez, who's a submission artist, let's face it. And against Joaquin Buckley, yeah, he's just another guy on Joaquin Buckley's highlight reel. And I think he'll be on Marquez's highlight reel. Marquez has actually been winning by submission recently. I don't think Jordan Wright goes for a takedown at all in this fight. I think he gets knocked out in epic fashion. And we're going to see another one of those entertaining post-fight interviews from Marquez where he calls out who knows who.
Maybe it's not Miley Cyrus this time, but
yeah,
as you mentioned, he's been a submission, a finisher in his recent fights. As we saw against Sam Alvey, that gnarly
rear naked choke, standing rear naked choke. Yeah,
it was like a sort of a bulldog. So it was a sort of thing like that, and it produced a wonderful picture of well, I wouldn't say it's wonderful, but a fantastic photo of just that submission. And Sam Alvey recently got booked against Ian Heinisch.
My goodness, I'm just saying now, fellas, bet your house on Ian Heinisch. Sam Alvey has not been good at winning fights as of late. Say what you will about Marquez, but he does get hit, but he can take all those shots. Sam Alvey actually rocked him at the end of the first round. I actually picked Sam Alvey to win that fight. Kind of a foolish pick in hindsight, but I think Wright definitely has the potential to hurt Marquez here, but I don't think he can eat those Marquez punches. They don't call him the Cuban Missile Crisis for nothing, man. This guy hits very hard, and Alvey's fairly durable, and I think much more durable than Wright. I don't think Wright can eat any of those punches. And as we've addressed before, the competition that Wright fought early in his career was abysmal. Some of the worst cans you've ever seen in MMA. So we haven't seen too much of Wright against high-level guys. And 2 of those fights, he got knocked out. I think Marquez gets it done here. It makes it look pretty easy.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I just wanted to point out the fact last time we were so confident on Jamie Pickett knocking out Wright, and he kind of upset us there. But no doubt, surely Julian Wright Marquez gets this one done. And it's going to be knockout. As you mentioned, he's got heavy hands. And he's got kicks as well. We've seen that on the Contender Series. And a big kick versus someone who's also
Phil
came out on
Hawes.
the scene.
Phil
There we
Hawes.
go, Phil Hawes, and that was this fight that ultimately got him signed to the UFC, and Dana White's reaction to that was phenomenal. And but yeah, I think there's going to be another Dana White big reaction in this one. I think it's going to come the way of Julian Marquez, and he's going to get it done in round 2. Big knockout, and it's going to be a one that we're going to be talking about yet again next week. I'm looking forward to Julian Marquez. As you mentioned, he's always good on the mic after he fights, and be interested to see what he says this weekend.
Yeah, who knows who will call out. Moving on to the main event of the prelims, Andrew Sanchez is fighting Bruno Silva, not the flyweight Bruno Silva, the Bruno Silva that fights at middleweight, who has legitimate one-punch KO power. He fought Wellington Turman just a couple months ago, and he's one of the few guys that if you let him get on top of you, he can pound you out with just a couple shots. Bruno Silva has ridiculous power. He was coming off a USADA suspension. A lot of people had doubts about him. They were thinking, does he have the same power without being on steroids or whatever he was on? And he answered that he still got that crazy power. But Andrew Sanchez, he's fairly consistent in his fights. He will usually look to outbox you on the feet, and on the ground, he usually has his way with you unless you're a really great grappler. And Bruno Silva's not a great grappler. Off of his back, he's not good at all. And I think if Sanchez uses his fight IQ here and gets to the ground consistently, I think this will be a pretty easy fight for him. I just hope he doesn't stand with Bruno too long because he definitely could get cracked here. He's been finished multiple times, but it's actually been in the 3rd round because he slows down. His defense isn't as good, and that's when he gets cracked here. So there could be a 3rd round scare for Sanchez here, but besides that, I think this is a really good fight for Sanchez. And very surprised to see him as an underdog.
Yeah, 100%. It was Andrew Sanchez. He fought. Was it Muradov in his last fight?
Yeah, Makhmud Muradov. Yes.
Who is a phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal fighter, phenomenal prospect. And I was very high on Andrew Sanchez. I can't remember. Was it a few fights ago? He had this big knockout and
Wellington Turman, the guy that Bruno Silva knocked out. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously Wellington Turman doesn't have the best of chins, but it was huge. He put his lights out. It was a phenomenal knockout, and I think Andrew Sanchez, I think he gets this one done. And I feel like, as you mentioned, round 3 we might see a scare, but I think Sanchez is going to withhold that pressure and eventually get that decision win.
Yeah, Sanchez just needs to use his main weapon here, his wrestling here, and just expose Bruno Silva on the ground because that has yet to happen to the UFC, and I think Sanchez definitely has got to do it as an underdog. So that's not a bad bet at all. Sanchez by decision or something like that. Bet it. Moving on. Danny Roberts is back after a while. He's been a while. He's fighting Ramazan Emeev. I think this is kind of a typical Ramazan Emeev fight. Ramazan Emeev, he's always a big favorite. But those fights are always close, man. Sometimes they're split decisions, as we saw in his recent fight. What do you expect from Danny Roberts here after a long layoff?
Yeah, as you mentioned, a long layoff, and it's going straight back into the deep end against Emeev. And in my opinion, this is a big fight and a tough fight for Danny Roberts. And to be honest, I'm going with Emeev in this fight. I think Emeev is the better fighter. Dare I say, in all aspects of MMA.
I would agree. The only fight he lost recently was against Anthony Rocco Martin. Rocco Martin is a pretty darn good wrestler. He was able to stuff every takedown that Emeev had. So on the feet, Emeev got outpointed. And Danny Roberts he's not a fan of outpointing guys. The guy will go for the KO when it's there. And sometimes that comes to his detriment because he blows his gas tank and guys can take him to the ground easily. Danny Roberts has also had some pretty shockingly bad fight IQ at times. Sometimes he'll just engage with grappling just for the sake of it, and it puts him in a bad spot. I think this is going to be a really good fight for Emeev here to get just another win on his win streak after some people had some doubts about him after the Rocco fight.
And yeah, as you mentioned, his last fight was against Zalim Ahmadayev, who's recently been not too long ago. It was cut from the UFC, but he made him spin in that fight with a knockout. But he lost against Michelle Pierre. That was Michelle Pierre's maybe his debut or maybe his second fight inside the UFC. I'm not too sure. But he's lost against Mike Perry, Nordine Taleb, Michelle Pierre, and he's been knocked out in 3 of them fights, and he's also been submitted. So has he been finished in every single one of his fights? I can't see at the bottom one, but he's been finished in 4 of them, to what I can see. So a little bit of worrying signs, and I think Ameev can take the fight wherever he wants.
Yeah, I believe Ameev will have a really good performance in this fight. Danny Roberts, he just has to learn these lessons, man. I don't know how long he can continue to make the same mistakes. I hope we see some improvements from him in this fight. But other than that, I think Ameev gets a fairly dominant, unanimous decision.
Yeah, and we'll move on to the next fight. We had Lupi Godinez, as we talked about in the last the recap. And here she is. She's fighting again. And now we're here to preview her next fight. We talked about it a little briefly against Lara Carolina. And we in her last fight, she got the submission winners. We see the armbar against Gutierrez. But in this one, she takes on a Carolina, a very long Carolina. And I think she's in for a different sort of fight in this one. I don't think she'll be able to get a submission in this one. As I mentioned, she does have really long limbs. But will she be able to get to the legs of Lara Carolina? I'm not too sure.
I believe that this is not the best matchup for Lupi Gadina on a week's notice. Lara Carolina, she's not the best grappler. We just saw Lupi Gadina show good grappling, but that was against a legitimate strawweight. And this is a legitimate flyweight. So I think the size difference here will be too much for Godinez, who's not super experienced. She's actually a big favorite. I don't think she should be with the size difference here. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. But where we've seen Lara Carolina, she has struggled on the ground in recent fights. We saw that that gnarly knee bar against Arlen Lipsky. I think that might have been submission of the year inside the UFC. I'm not too sure, but I think that was definitely my submission of the year because it was absolutely disgusting to look at. But yeah, that's where Lupi has the advantage. But can Lupi get to her legs? As I mentioned, Lara Carolina is huge. She's big.
Yeah, sure. Contender Series fight was at bantamweight. I don't think Godinez would win many bantamweight fights. So that's mainly my reasoning here. If Lara Carolina was Godinez's size, I would pick Godinez easily, but that's not the case here. I don't know how well Godinez can get those takedowns like Lipsky did and like Botejo did. Carolina was originally set to fight Jar Eubanks, and that fight would have been very difficult for Carolina, but Godinez is definitely not as difficult, and I think Lara Carolina is just too big. It's just that simple. Size matters, and especially when I think her best path to victory would be to get a takedown. I don't know if she would get those takedowns, and on the feet, Lara Carolina has a huge reach advantage, probably too big for Godinez to overcome, who's just has 7 professional fights, and she started as a pro in 2018, so yeah, I don't think Godinez is a good bet at all. She's a 3-1 favorite. I don't know how you can see that when there's such a big size difference.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going with I'm going for the upset in this one. I think Carolina gets this one done. And as you said previously, I think this is the bad matchmaking from the UFC to throw straight back in straight away against a girl like Lara Carolina. But I'm hoping Lupi proves me wrong. The only way she wins this if she gets the fight to the floor. Yeah.
It's kind of a gamble with the UFC. They did it with Hamzat before. They brought in an undefeated fighter from Ireland, and it did not work out for him. But Godinez, on the other hand, she actually was making a point to say that her last fight was the first fight where she had a full camp to prepare for a certain opponent, and she was preparing for a different opponent than Lara Carolina. Lara Carolina has a different style. And also one thing to point here, I think Lara Carolina could also just out muscle Godinez and maybe get some control time against the fence, that's definitely an option against a much smaller opponent. Also a much shorter opponent too. So the knees could always be open for Carolina there. So yeah, very confusing to see Godinez as this big of a favorite when she's undersized.
100%. And so are you going with who you going with in this fight?
I think Lara Carolina gets a unanimous decision.
I agree with you. I'm also on that same train. We talked about it. I think they're throwing Godinez in there with a harder fight, a big matchup. Maybe they should have kept her out and just got her a fight at strawweight and keep that momentum going. But a fight at featherweight that I'm really looking forward to: Nate Landwehr versus Ludovic Klein. I was really big on Ludovic Klein. And after his debut against Shane Young, he put on a show-stopping performance, announced himself into the UFC like it was nobody's business. And in his last fight against Mike Triziano, he looked human. And but against an opponent like Nate Landwehr, do I see him getting back on track? Yes. And I think Nate has been knocked out quite a few times in the past. He got knocked out versus against
Julian and Rosa.
Was it Herbert Burns?
And Herbert Burns both knocked them out in the first round.
And I believe Ludovic Klein has heavier hands than them two. So I'm going with Ludovic Klein. I'm going to go with KO in this one. I feel like his striking will be too crisp, and I think Nate Landwehr is going to get lit up quite early.
Yeah, Ludovic Klein has the proper style to beat Nate Landwehr. He has super heavy hands and even heavier kicks. A lot of his knockouts are actually by head kick. Nate Landwehr, he's been knocked out by 2 knees in the UFC. Flying knee from Herbert Burns and a flying knee from, 2 flying knees he's gotten knocked out by. Nate Landwehr has always relied on his durability to succeed. Even in M1, he was getting rocked by these guys, but he was able to take the shots. But when you have that fighting style long enough, eventually your chin will go, and it kind of appears that the chin is not what it used to be for Nate Landwehr, and that's very bad news when you're fighting a guy Ludovic Klein with very lethal striking. I think Ludovic Klein gets a highlight reel head kick KO in the first round. Nate Landwehr, he really doesn't know how to point fight. He really just knows how to move forward and charge, and that gets him knocked out. And I think Ludovic Klein finds the opening and gets a really good first round finish.
Yeah, a very fun fight at featherweight. I'm really looking forward to it. But another fight that really interests me, but this one's at bantamweight. You might recognize him. It's Brandon Davis. He was in the UFC. Was it Carl Bochniak a really good fight?
Yes.
And Zabit, he got banana split by Zabit, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Brandon Davis had a really good run in the UFC. He lost a couple fights, and they kind of were done with him. And I always personally thought that Brandon Davis would find his way back into the UFC. He's been in tough spots before, and he's found his way out of them. When he fought Zabit Magomedsharipov, Zabit was a 1,300 favorite. He was a huge favorite. It was in the Barclays Center, I believe. It was a really big card. And Brandon Davis had somewhat competitive striking with Zabit Magomedsharipov, who is a foregone conclusion in many people's eyes to beat him. So Brandon Davis, he's been in this underdog spot before, and I think he wins this one as well. Donat Baccarel is a really good striker, but man, he does not have the best striking defense, does not have the best head movement. When he fought Alatanghe Lee, who prefers to wrestle, I would say, fairly well rounded, but prefers to wrestle, he actually lost that fight on volume, and he was actually gotten hurt in that fight. I think Brandon Davis is the bigger guy in this fight. He's fought a lot at featherweight, hence the Zabit fight, but he's not bad at bantamweight either. He actually has a win over rising prospect Randy Costa in the second round with a rear naked choke. That could be Baccarel's fate here. I don't think Baccarel's really good on the ground at all, honestly. Off his back, really not that good. I think Davis takes advantage of that. He mixes in the takedowns just like he did against Giga Chikadze. He actually got a split decision loss to Giga Chikadze. So I think this is a good fight for Davis to come back to the UFC against and I think he gets a win after such a long time from the UFC.
Now, as you mentioned, you just an absolutely incredible list of names. He had a good run inside the UFC, and he got really unlucky with the names that they gave him. Guy Jakarta, Quan Ho Kang, who's a phenomenal fighter too. We did mention him, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Randy Costa got a submission win in round 2 with one of the best first rounds I've ever witnessed. That was an incredible fight. That was the beast Magomed Sharapov, and then we had Karl Bochniak. Oh my God, he's really been through it all inside the UFC. Very, very tested. Got cut, and then won four fights on the regional scene, and now he's back. I believe this is a short notice fight as well, which he needed, and I'm happy to see him back. I was always a fan of him when he was inside the UFC, and it's always fun to see him fight. He always brings the show to the fans. He's always entertaining, and I feel like this is going to be another entertaining fight against. How do you pronounce it? Dana
Baggerel. Yeah, Dana Baggerel.
Yeah. As mentioned, this is a good fight for him to come back to. Training out Jackson Wink MMA is a little bit controversial with Jackson Wink MMA today, so whether you want to mention that or not.
Yeah. Let's just go right into it. So John Jones is no longer welcome at Jackson Wink MMA because Wiggle John said we have to draw a line somewhere after the recent domestic violence issues. We just can't approve of that, and he's no longer welcome at the gym. Sure, other guys can train with him. Jackson can definitely go over there and train with him, but inside the gym, he's no longer welcome. And this is exactly what needed to happen to John Jones. People in his life no longer just accepting him, just hoping he'll improve. They just need to say, no, you need to fix some things, and I won't be involved with you until that happens. And that was a really good move. I don't know where he'll train at because it definitely looks like he still has an appetite to train. I don't know who would take him, but yeah, very, very good move by the camp over there at Jackson Wink.
I agree, and but Jackson Wink, they're a phenomenal team. Have some of the best fighters in past and present, and a very, very good move as you mentioned. But moving back to the Dana Baggerel fight, he beat Kevin Nasrudad in his last fight. Kevin is a phenomenal guy, very fun to talk to. But his chin got cracked against some. It was the fight before that, and then
it was against Miles Johns. And yeah, as you said, Dana Baggerel, he's coming off of 2 KO wins, one over
Canetti.
Yeah, Guido Canetti.
Yeah,
and the other against Natividad. Both guys who don't have great chins, and he's fighting a guy in Davis who has never been knocked out. The guy's super durable if you just watch that Randy Costa fight. So I don't think Baggerel can get the KO win like he's gotten recently. I think he's going to lose momentum here when he fights a guy in Davis that can mix it up with the takedowns.
I'm going to go. I think Dana Baggerel starts strong. Davis gets knocked down in that first round, and as you mentioned, that toughness from Davis comes out into play, and I think he takes over in the second and third round. And in that third round, I think he comes close to finishing Dana in this fight, and I don't think I don't think he gets it over the line, but he gets really close.
Yeah, we also were talking about Jackson Wink. Let's be honest, the best names they had at that gym have either retired or left. So the bodies there, they're not as well as they once were. Sure, they still got some stars, Michelle Watterson, Holly Holm, Kalishma Shields. But when we're talking about the males left there, man, they're really not as notable. We're talking about Juan Adams, and man, I really can't think of the others right now because they're not as notable as the guys at ATT or Sanford.
Maurice Jackson.
Yeah, we're talking about lower level guys. I don't know if Baggerel's getting the same looks as he would have, say, if he was at the gym in 2011. So that's something to note there. It's got a really good name behind it because of previous legends that have built up the name, but I don't think it is what it once was. And Brandon Davis, I think he has the tools to beat Dana Baggerel here. By unanimous decision, that would be my pick for this fight.
I agree. I'm also on the train with that one. But the first fight of the evening, we go back to a women's fight in the flyweight division.
I believe this is
Oh no,
strawberry. Oh, this is strawberry.
strawweight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
strawberry.
Estelina Nunes versus Ariana Carilosi.
Yes. Yeah, Carnelossi will always have a special spot in my heart because she was the first fight on UFC 261 in front of a sold-out crowd in Jacksonville, Florida. That was such a beautiful moment. Nearly brought a tear to my eye when you heard the audience going crazy over Na Liang versus Carnelossi. That was a really good fight. Both girls fought their heart out, and they were clearly affected by the crowd's energy, and they just fought a crazy fight. Carnelossi eventually got the second round TKO. That was very impressive. And her only other UFC fight besides that was a competitive striking match with Angela Hill, which ended with a cut stoppage in the third round. So she hung in there with Angela Hill. That lets you know what level Carnelossi's on. And Estela Nunes, on the other hand, I don't think she can hang with Angela Hill. I think in terms of striking, both women are definitely on different levels. I think Carnelossi has a power edge in this fight. I think she has a physicality edge in this fight. And also, Estela Nunes is not much of a grappler either. I think this is a really good matchup for Carnelossi to pick her apart here and possibly get a stoppage here because, my goodness, she's so powerful. And also, Nunes is one of these fighters that got signed, and before they even fought, they got popped by USADA. So who knows what version of Nunes we're going to see in there. Carnelossi would probably be the one you think would get popped by USADA. She's got an amazing physique. I think this is a really good showcase for Carnelossi, and she's going to get more momentum after such a great win over Na Liang back in April.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. If you look at Nunes' as you mentioned, record, this is as a debut. As you mentioned, she got popped by USADA before she even fought. And her last fight was in one championship in 2018. That's a big, long layoff. How is she going to deal with that? And it'd be interesting to see. She has fought for the championship in one. She fought against Angela Lee. She lost versus Anaconda Choke. But you know, she's been there in the big fights in different promotions. But as you mentioned, Carnelossi is you know, she hits hard, and I think she's going to crack it early.
Yeah, Carnelossi has a super aggressive style, and as we mentioned before, with female fighters that are super aggressive and that are well rounded, I think that they can get very far because really stands out, especially when you got the power like Carnelossi.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you know her last fight was almost was 4 years ago. No,
Yeah.
3 years ago. Can I count? 4.
Yeah, whatever. Regardless of that, Nunes, she's actually fairly young. We could see a completely different fighter in there. Who knows? But we've seen enough from Carnelossi to know that she probably should win this fight.
100%. If you look at Nunes' record, other than Angela Lee, Gina in Yong, and Me Yamaguchi, she's not fought as the best in competition. We're talking like sort of 3-0, 0-0, 0-2, 1-1, 1-2, and 0-0 outside the one championship.
Yeah, if you take a look at her record, she's actually really inexperienced. I think Carnelossi has more UFC experience, also more experience overall. I think this is a good matchup for Carnelossi to look really good with her power both in the grappling and on the feet.
Yeah, Carnelossi's loss is to a young Amanda Ribas, and as you mentioned, Angela Hill. So
yeah,
I think she gets this one done against Nunes.
Yeah, and Angela Hill fight that was actually by a cut, so she didn't even get finished. I think Carnelossi is the much better fighter here, and that about wraps it up for our preview of UFC Vegas 40 this Saturday. And when you look at this card, it's not bad at all. Really, not that bad at all. It's kind of the main event that soured people on it. Of course, if you don't know the names, of course you're not going to be much of a fan of the card. But in my opinion, it's a pretty good card besides the main event. And after that, what do we have to look forward to? We have Marvin Vettori against Paulo Costa. I cannot wait to talk about that one next week, but that's the next week. And that about wraps it up for this episode. What else do you have to say, Lenny?
Or does it? Or is there one thing that we should probably quickly talk about.
The booking of Edwards Masvidal. What else do you want to talk about?
Are you ready?
Yeah, what is it? What is it? What is it?
Oh, is it going to come up?
What's coming? Oh, you want to talk Fury Wilder 3? Because that fight was unbelievable. Of course, we're called the March and Silva MMA show, but if you were a fight fan, you were glued to the TV last Saturday watching a straight-up war. A war that featured 5 knockdowns between two of the toughest guys in the history of the heavyweight division. Tyson Fury kind of did what I thought he would out there. I didn't think he would be suffering a 10-7 round, but Tyson Fury proved that he was super durable and had more volume, and also he simply had better cardio, more skill, and on his back foot, Wilder just is not that effective. He was unable to bully Fury, and Fury took advantage of that, and he became the bully. And my goodness, they should have thrown in the towel there, but of course, Wilder had made it very clear you want to go out on a shield. That was a terrible beating later on in the fight, but my goodness, this was unbelievable. Like the best heavyweight title fight in years, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Let's give some credit to Wilder. Oh my God, the heart and the determination of this guy. We can't discredit. He really went out there. He gave it his all. And if you look at him in the early stages of the third fight and the early stages of the second fight, massive improvement. I've got to say, he came out and in that first round, he was jabbing to the body. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? This is crazy. This is different. I'm not. Am I actually watching a Wilder fight? Like he's jabbing to the body. It was just different. But Fury just sapped his energy. That's what happened. And as we've all seen in that late stages of the rounds, Fury just took over and put an absolute beating on him. And in that fourth round, I was thinking it could have been it. Honestly, I was thinking Fury might not be able to get up. I think the second knockdown really worried me for Fury because he just looked confused when he was sat on the floor. He looked, he just looked dazed a little bit and maybe thinking, Fury's, Wilder's, he's really improved but I don't know, but yeah, Fury also has bigger heart and he just got up and I don't know what to say, but it was just an incredible fight, very very good fight, and I was up at 5 a.m. screaming my head off. It was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. And then in that 11th round, Fury just comes out and just puts him out cold, and that's the result Fury wanted. He wanted him to put him out cold to end it and say, I've knocked you out. I'm the better man. And coincidentally, that was also what Wilder wanted. He wanted to get knocked out or knock him out.
Yeah. Also, Fury came in at 277 pounds, the heaviest he's come in at, and that was the right move because he was able to take advantage of that in the clinch. He just wore on Wilder and slowed him down significantly. And also, once Wilder got rocked, he forgot all about the body shots. He forgot about all the new things he learned with his new trainer. He went back to the old guy, just looking for that big shot. And he actually broke his right hand, his main weapon. And once he was able to use that, he was basically a punching bag for Fury. And Fury got the 11th round KO in epic fashion. That was a prolonged beating, a terrible beating. But we learned a lot about Wilder. Some people were questioning his heart. He kind of played a bully his whole career, and he got steamrolled in the second fight. But in this fight, he really made a good account of himself, getting a 10-7 round against the current champion. That's no joke, man. All those knockdowns. This was just a crazy war, and just like you all screaming at the TV, the whole fight. I lost my voice at the end of it. That's all you need to know. Very awesome stuff, and I believe that Fury versus Usyk, that's the right fight to make, assuming Usyk gets past Anthony Joshua in that rematch.
Yes, as you mentioned there, we learned a lot about Fury. But what we learned most is Fury is the best heavyweight that we have in the world right now. No one beats him. Anthony Joshua, after seeing what Usyk did to Joshua, it sets my mind right that I know that Fury would have battered Anthony Joshua. And I think I like Anthony Joshua more than Fury. But yeah, Fury would have just steamrolled him.
Yeah, I personally would pick Wilder against Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, I don't know, man. It doesn't look like he gets up for certain fights. It looks like he's not super motivated for certain fights, and we've seen his chin let him down at times as well. So I think Wilder would crack that chin, but that's another conversation for another time. Hopefully, boxing gets its stuff together and gets these good fights booked instead of who knows what. You know, that they love build up fights for the super fights. I hope we don't see much of that. I know the Saudi Arabian government is foaming at the mouth for Fury versus Joshua in there someday, and that's very likely. But until then, that's all we got to say about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see Fury take on Usyk, or basically Usyk, and I'd like to see Wilder take on Andy Ruiz Jr. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It would be a phenomenal fight. But anyway, as mentioned, that's another talk for another time. And this is the end of the show. It's been 1 hour and 15 minutes long talk. And it was phenomenal to catch back up again and talk about some fights. I thoroughly enjoyed this show. Thank you very much, Oscar, for joining me.
All right. It was really good talking to you guys. And for this Saturday, make sure to enjoy the fights.
Yeah, the cards that I slept on are always the best cards. So make sure you tune in.